I'm at a bar in Hollywood and three girls walk up to me and say, "Hey, would you ever consider doing pornography?" All of a sudden there was a lot of shame, and I was at this crossroads where I thought the only thing I can do with my life is continue to do the thing that blew up my life. Everything came crashing down. Anxiety was amplified, depression was deepened, and I thought, well, if this is not going to fix me, maybe I'm unfixable, and the only thing that made sense was for me to take my life.
When you first heard the gospel message, did you have any doubt or question of if it applied to you?
Man, that's such a great question.
Joshua, welcome. And if I can just have you start by taking us back to 11 years ago when you had this encounter and what your life was like.
An important part of my story that I like to share in being someone who, I'm on staff with a large mental health organization, and just exploring the depths of the way that we understand emotions as a child and things that happen to us as a child. It begins to formulate how we see ourselves and see the world. And for me, growing up in a small town in South Carolina, where my mom was 15 when she got pregnant with me and 16 when she had me, my dad was the same age and he was in the same town. And I mean, we're talking small enough town where I graduated with less than 100 people. I think we just got a Taco Bell recently,
Wow.
Like super
Like
small. Recently. Yeah. So like one gas station, one grocery store, like super small. So I say that to say, the probability of me seeing the man that was my father and is my father in that town, very high, seeing him just, living life. So as a kid, I would see this man that I knew to be my dad, but he was never in my life. And it made me to believe, well, it must be that there is something wrong with me that causes him not to want to be my dad. And, we could talk about how prevalent and somewhat normative it is regarding fatherlessness in today's society. It's at an all-time high. But in my town, it was not normative whatsoever. Like me being someone who was involved in athletics and doing all this stuff, me being someone who didn't have their dad there, like I was the oddball. It was not normal at all. And I didn't know how to navigate through it. I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So I didn't say anything. So I just internalized all these things. So me believing that, man, there must be something wrong with me. It led me to believe, well, maybe I'm the solution. And if I become, a good enough student, a good enough athlete, if I do enough, maybe that would equate to me feeling as if I was enough. Mm-hmm. And, that journey set me on like becoming a good student, becoming a good athlete. Around 12, 13, I started doing some acting and modeling. I was walking through the mall, the mall search, and
Yes.
it's like, hey, you have a good smile, whatever. And I signed with an agency in Charlotte and started doing that, and that was a large part of my life, along with basketball. But also around 13, I saw pornography for the first time, and me being a kid where there was no conversation about sex, intimacy, relationships. The Bible talks about this, Romans 12:2. You're either being conformed by the world or you're being transformed by the renewing of your mind. So either the world is going to teach you or the word is going to teach you. And what I didn't know was detrimental for me because I never had a conversation about sex. I never had a conversation about intimacy, relationships, and I never saw it modeled. I never in my life did I have, did I live in a home where my mom was, I had never had a mom and dad, or even my grandparents, like they didn't sleep in the same room. So I didn't have a picture of what does it look like to be connected to someone. Mm-hmm. So then when I saw pornography, of course, it made me feel some sort of way. I wanted to look at it, but I had shame that I didn't want to look at it, but I could not look at it. But what I also felt was, man, maybe if I partook or reenacted what I saw, maybe I'd feel what I didn't. And that led me to living a very promiscuous lifestyle. So this achiever personality, believing that maybe if I do enough, that would equate to me at least minimizing these negative emotions that I had regarding my dad. It led me to be a good athlete, good student, all this stuff. And, carried that into college, studied theater regarding my undergraduate, played basketball, fraternity, all the stuff. I signed with an agency in Hollywood and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to move there and, I'm going to make it. I'm going to, if I'm in closer proximity to the industry I want to be in, of course, that would equate to more success. And I moved there, and things are fine. Modeling was going better than acting. As you guys know, it's like acting is more of a grind, like building a reel, having relationships, auditions. Kind of in the middle of that, I'm at a bar in Hollywood, and 3 girls walk up to me and say, "Hey, would you ever consider doing pornography?" And I was like, what a bizarre question.
Yeah.
To ask, but they were headhunters for a porn agency, and their literal job was to go out on Friday and Saturday nights in Hollywood and find attractive people and ask them, "Hey, would you ever do porn? If the answer is yes, I'm going to set up an introduction with my agent," and then they would get a nominal fee for every person they made that introduction for, and then if they ended up doing porn. So I, against better judgment, I knew it wasn't a good thing. I knew it wasn't something I was pursuing, never considered it, but I said yes. And I met this guy. Should have been a red flag right away because, the 3 questions he asked me: how did you grow up? What are you doing in LA? What do you hope to accomplish? First thing I said was, well, grew up just me and my mom, AKA I grew up from a broken home. So, he was doing an assessment of how can I extract information from you so that I can have something to manipulate you with? It was a value proposition. So looking for, do you come from a broken home? Is there brokenness in your life? Is there something that you're looking for that maybe I can use my language to manipulate you to do something that is going to benefit me? And so I said, yeah, grew up in a broken home. I grew up just me and my mom. I'm in LA modeling and acting, and I guess I want to be famous. Which I'd love to come back to that. But that was kind of where I was at. And he promised me the world. You'll be famous. You'll do all this stuff. And this was the time where the porn industry was parodying a lot of movies. So they were like, man, this is a great time for you. You've got acting experience. You're a good looking guy. You'll be the lead in all these films. So I was like, man, this is not what I want to do, but I wasn't having the success that I wanted. And if I was honest, like I was doing okay. I wasn't crushing it, but I was doing okay. But in contrast to my peers, there were some guys that were doing better than me, had, gone further than me. And I'm like, man, maybe this is as close as it's going to get. So even though it was a counterfeit version of what I wanted to do, maybe that was as close as I could get. So I said yes. And I did a film, and it was worse than I thought. And I felt terrible about it. I was like, I'll never do this again. This was not what I thought it was going to be, much worse than I thought it would be. And then, this is 2006, so very different world. So my mainstream manager finds out, what I've done and calls me into the office. And generally, if I got a call that I'm coming in, it's like, okay, we're looking at Polaroids, we're looking at a project.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes or no to something. No, hey, there's this major porn site that you're on, and if we know, we clearly that's you. So we want you to, is that you? Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, we can no longer represent you. So, I mean, a lot of people saw it. And then, the thing about being from a small town is it only takes one person to know one thing about your life for everyone to know everything about your life. And, one person told another person, and then someone told my uncle, and my uncle called my mom. And it's like, you need to talk to Joshua. And, being from the South, it's like how much of your name gets used is how much trouble you're in. So when I heard Joshua Luke Broome, I'm like,
the middle name?
Yeah. Yeah. When the middle name, it's like, it's on, and, man, it's always like difficult for me to like go back to that moment, because that is the moment that it got real. And it's the moment that I was not like the perfect kid, and, I did some dumb stuff as a kid, but, that's the first time that I remember vividly that I hurt my mom. Like I hurt the only person that had never hurt me, that would never hurt me, that would protect me no matter what. All of a sudden there was a lot of shame. And I was at this crossroads where I thought, well, the only thing I can do with my life is continue to do the thing that blew up my life. And I'm not sure what the thinking was, but I really thought, okay, the only feasible path forward is for me to continue doing this, because there is no other way. which was not true. I was 22. I could have done other things with my life.
Yeah.
But I believed that, well, this is the only viable option for me. I was in the industry for a little over 6 years, did over 1,000 films, made a lot of money, won a lot of awards. And throughout that time, I got nominated for Performer of the Year 4 times. And then in 2012, I won. And when I won the award and it didn't make me feel like I thought it would, everything came crashing down. Anxiety was amplified, depression was deepened. And I thought, well, if this is not going to fix me, maybe I'm unfixable. And the only thing that made sense was for me to take my life. So I was already struggling with suicidal ideation. To this day, 43 people who were not just in the industry, but close friends of mine, people who I worked alongside, people I knew, people I hung out with, roommates, 43 people have died of suicide and overdose. So many more than that, but 43 people that I knew personally.
Wow.
So, I mean, in even moments where there was an HIV outbreak and someone who I had sex with, unprotected sex with, had HIV, died of HIV, and me in the industry shuts down for a few months and thinking, am I going to die? This person died. I knew what I did. And the test kept coming back clean, but just wrestling with all of that. I thought the only thing that makes sense is for me to die. And I walk into this bank and I wanted someone to agree with me. And what I mean by that is I live my life based on so many people's opinion to the extent where I needed permission from a stranger so that I would take my life. And the way that I was going to essentially manipulate her emotions into a response was when I got a check, the producer or whomever was writing the check, generally on the memo, it would be either the title of a movie, which was generally graphic, or they would write something almost being antagonistic, to belittle you, to embarrass you. But I would never hand those checks to people. I would go, Dropbox, ATM, just anything other than hand it to a person. But on this day, I wanted to slide the check across the counter to the person. I wanted them to look at it. I wanted them to look at me, and I wanted them to shake their head in disgust. Best case scenario, I wanted them to say something out loud to affirm I'm exactly who I thought I was. And when I walk into this bank, I slide the check across the counter. No reaction. I'm like shaking.
Yeah.
It's funny. We were talking about this. I was at a Chase Bank on the corner of Ventura and Sepulveda. And I'm in this bank and she didn't acknowledge anything. And, I'm shaking. I'm like pale, like tears streaming across my face. Cause I'm wanting her to say how disgusting are you? Something. And she says nothing. And she hands me my receipt and I'm like, I was kind of just paralyzed, and she walks around the counter. It was the middle of the day. There weren't a lot of people in there. And she walks around the counter and puts her hand on my shoulder and says, Joshua, are you okay? Joshua, how can I help you? And what she didn't know is that because of the way that I was living and the lies that I was believing and the things that I was allowing in my life, that was the first time that I'd heard my real name in well over a year.
Wow.
Because in the industry, you go by pseudonym.
Yeah.
And, I'd love to come back to this, but, just the reality of if you detach, yourself from who you are, then you will do things that are not indicative of, the humanity. We see this from, gangs to homelessness to, there's aspects of you that when you identify as someone other than who you are, you remove yourself from, the dignity and also in some instance, the repercussions of your actions. There's no accountability there. But, so in that moment that happens. And when she said my name, the first thing that I thought of was, I need to go call my mom. And I go and I call my mom and she chews me out, cause she'd been calling and texting and I just, it was part pride, part fear and part, belief of what value can I, contribute to you?
So she was still kind of pursuing a relationship with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my mom never stopped. And then after she chewed me out properly, she said, I just want you to know something. Um, you will always be my son. I never stopped loving you, but I do want you to know you're so much better than the way you're living. Please come home. So I scrambled, I subleased my place, and I grabbed my clothes, and I went to, the Carolinas. And the only thing that I could figure out to do for a career was to coach CrossFit. So find a mentor, network, get a bunch of credentials, do all the stuff. And in 2 years of that, I find myself being very successful in the health and fitness space. Then I meet this girl, and I meet her, and she didn't really hang out a lot, and she was just different than everyone else. And I asked her on a date a bunch of times. She said no a bunch of times. And then she finally said, well, I go for a long run before I go to church on Sundays. So if you want to meet me, go for a run, we can do that. I was like, I'll take whatever I can get. And
were you a runner at all?
Not at all. Well, not a long run. It's like sprint.
Yeah, what does she mean by long run?
Yeah, like sprints with sleds and power cleans. Like, sure, but she would do like a 5K for fun, which is, scary. But I was like, whatever, and I show up, and I'm thinking and all this stuff. And I begin to realize, I'm like, man, within a CrossFit gym, very community oriented. We hang out a lot. And I was like, man, she doesn't like really hang out. She just comes in and works hard, and like best athlete in the gym, kicks everybody's butt, but then just leaves. Like, she doesn't like linger or hang out. I bet she doesn't know about my past. And there were people there that knew, but I would just withhold it until I would get found out. And then I'm just kind of, that's something that I used to do, but whatever. And, but I was like, man, this would impact her. Mm-hmm. This girl's perfect, like she's not going to be okay with this. So it wasn't me being a man of integrity. It was like, man, if she finds out, like, she's going to lose it. Like, if we start hanging out and then she finds out after the fact, like, I might get fired from my job. Like, I don't know. It's like worst case scenario. So I'm like, I'm going to tell her up front so that it minimizes the damage for me. Like, I wasn't doing it for her, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And then, so our run never turned to, our run never made its way to a run. It was a walk. And I was just like, hey, I need to tell you something. I need to drop this atomic bomb. And I was like, hey, I'm this kid that grew up. His dad was in the town, but he chose not to be in my life. I'm this kid that his daddy didn't want. And I've done a lot of pornography, and it's still on the internet, and it's available for the world to see. And everything that creates the most shame in my life is visible, for anyone everywhere. And it probably always will be. This is who I am. And she was pretty taken back by that. But then after a few minutes, she was like, hey, I don't want to minimize what you said. I don't want to say that, your decisions didn't have consequences. And I realized that was, a lot of stuff was probably traumatic for you. But I want you to know that you're not defined by the worst thing you've ever done. And you won't be defined by the greatest thing you ever do, because you are not the author of you. And that conflicted with everything that I believed to be most true.
Yeah.
I thought I certainly was defined by my dad not wanting me and the decisions that I'd made. Like, this is a byproduct of who I am. And she was like, no. And it was challenging. And then we like walked and talked. And, from there, she was just like, tell me about your family. What kind of food do you like? I'm like, why do you still want to talk to me? Like, this girl's crazy. And we walked and talked, and, I know I've made this story very long, but that happened. And then, she invited me to church, and then walked into a church and didn't feel like I was supposed to be there, but went there because she was going to be there, and heard the gospel, and gave my life to Jesus. And that girl that I went on that walk with, her name's Hope, and we've been married for almost 9 years, and we have 4 boys. And yeah.
When you first heard the gospel message, did you have any doubt or question of if it applied to you?
Man, that's such a great question. Because so when I heard the gospel, so it was 2 Samuel chapter 9, he was talking about this dynamic between David and Mephibosheth. And 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 8, Mephibosheth responds to the grace that David is offering, saying, hey, come into my kingdom, sit at my table, be part of this. I'm actually going to restore part of Canaan to you, which is the kingdom of God. I'm inviting you into the kingdom of God to be part of this kingdom. When he was hiding in Lodabar, he's hiding in this place because he thought historically, I deserve death. So I'm thinking I'm going to get beheaded, but you invite me into your kingdom and say I got a seat at your table and I'm going to be part of this kingdom. This was hard to kind of wrap his head around, to the extent where he was so sure about his destiny being attached to his father Jonathan and his grandfather Saul that in 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 8, he refers to himself as a dead dog. Essentially, he's like, hey, this is great and all, but what do you want with me? Like, don't you know who I am? Don't you know who I've done? Don't you know that who my name is attached to? And I thought, yeah, because I understood the gospel message. I understood that Jesus was perfect. He was fully God, fully man, went to the cross. He faced temptation, never sinned, goes to the cross, dies, raised from the dead. And I'm like, okay, Romans 10:9. If you believe in your heart, that Jesus is Lord and that he was raised from the dead, on the third day, you'll be saved. I was like, this is amazing for whoever that's for, but don't you know who I am? So like when he was talking about that, I'm like, yes, that's me. And then he goes to Hebrews 12:2 and he talks about Jesus approaching the cross with joy, like joy set before him, scorning our shame, seated at the right hand of God. And I'm just like, joy? Where does that come from? Why does he have joy? He's omniscient. He's all knowing. He knows what's going to happen. We were talking about what had just happened to him. Why would he have joy? And then it hit me like a ton of bricks when I realized the joy that he had in his heart was because he had love for you and me. And the Father that I always desired to have, I did have.
Oh, I love hearing that. Thank you so much. And of
Absolutely.
course, thank you, CBN, our wonderful platform where we get to share this story. If you want to support the podcast, learn more about CBN, you can go to cbn.com or heavenmeetsearth.com. And we also want to thank Museum of the Bible for letting us use their beautiful studio here to bring this podcast together.
Amazing. Yeah. Thanks for being here, Josh. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Enjoy.